In this video, we're going to be upgrading this Axial SCX24 with all of these parts that we got from NexxSpeed. So we're going to be putting all of this in. It has carbon fiber chassis rails. It has a whole separate side chassis kit. It is going to completely transform this truck. This is utterly ridiculous. This is going to be one crazy SCX24 build. Like I mentioned, chassis rails. This is the whole side chassis. It's really going to transform it. We've got a front bumper that really looks great. We have gears. We have some brass wheel hub extensions. We have a front bumper mount. We have the diff cover. We have the brass wheel weights. We have a different pinion if we want to put it on there. Wheel covers, wheel hub sets, steering servo mount, and then because we're doing all this to it, we had to go straight to the man, the myth, the legend, CCXRC, and get his Honey Badger analog servo to put into it, because not only are we adding all this weight, we're going to be adding some big old Injora tires to it. These things are huge, big tires that we're going to be putting to it. It's going to completely transform this truck. I think what we need to do is we're going to get started by getting this body off, getting the current tires and wheels off. We're going to start looking first at these chassis rails and this different chassis conversion kit over here, seeing what we need to do there. This whole chassis kit here does come with a full instruction manual, which is really nice. And it starts with you having the driveline out all the way just to the motor and gearbox. So we have some disassembly to do, which James is over here working on. We have some disassembly to do on this truck for sure before we even can get started assembling this chassis.
So we have to line all this up. And there's those tabs right there. So if I hold this, can you that screw and that screw? I'm ready to run on one. Step 4 incomplete.
Update here. So the instructions, they're not, I'm going to say they're not 100% complete. They don't tell you everything you need to know. Here's where we've got so far. It tells you that this front plate right here is the battery tray. It doesn't mention anything about moving over the battery strap from your old. So you want to do that before you actually do any of the steps here, because once it's in, it's really hard to fish it back through. Now clearly you can see James and I got it done. Here is the battery strap. It's now here, so that's good. Other things, so the suspension and the skid plate all screw in basically just as stock on the bottom here, so that is good. That's nice and secure now that that's in. Servo wire from the stock servo, you can see I'm still running the stock servo here, is actually not long enough, and it tells you here in the instructions that you need to cut and solder in 3 pieces of wire that are 110 millimeters long. Seriously? You want us to cut and splice in 3 wires? Now they even provide you with the wire, so you can actually cut this at 110 millimeters, cut your stock wiring and extend it. Boo. Fortunately for us, you want to do one of 2 things. I have some servo extension wires, which are very, very cheap and very easy. You can just plug that in, and then you have this mess long wire here that you deal with. Fortunately for me, thank you, Tony CCXRC, his Honey Badger servo, which is much better anyway, comes with a much longer wire, much more than the additional 110 millimeters I need. So that is going to be replaced, swapped in there, which we're going to do in a later step, and that's going to give us enough length to reach back here to where the receiver is. Last update is we need to look right in here are some screws with some nuts on it. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. I am hoping that those nuts are the right ones. We haven't found out yet. But there's some things got to hold the shocks on, right? On the factory chassis, the shock towers are plastic and you screw into those. There is nowhere for it to screw into here. It should just, there is not even on the instructions a suggestion as to where you may screw the shocks into. So you get to pick where you want to screw the shocks into. But there's nothing You can put them in different holes. There's lots of holes that you can choose, but there's nothing for the screw to physically screw into. So I'm hoping that these nuts right here is exactly what we're gonna need for that. Let's make some more progress, and then we'll let you know what we've got. We've mounted the shocks per where we were actually given a photo of kind of what the finished product here was supposed to look like. And so we have mounted the shocks per kind of those guidelines. Problem is, it doesn't work out. I am guessing we were not supposed to start with the Chevy C10 version of it. That looks a little silly, right? Our front axle is way out farther than what they suggest from the whole design. Our rear is much straighter. It's like the front rear balance here is not correct. I would love it if this whole chassis was actually more forward. What we're going to have to look at is, can we move this rear shock forward, let the rear at least come down, make that look better. Maybe this front shock needs to come up, kind of to hold balance the whole chassis. Here's what we've decided to do. We went away from the little itty bitty super tiny nuts that are supposed to help you hold the shocks on. We use this metal bar up here that is supposed to be in this location, and we just screwed the shocks into it, which is actually moving it up some. The rear here, we laid the shocks way down compared to where they were supposed to be, and instead of this metal bar being all the way back here at the very, very tail end, we use that metal bar again for the shocks to screw into. Part of the reason why we did that is these little nuts are so small that if you ever lose them out on the trail or anything like that, even no matter where you lose them, they're gone forever. These red bars, if they somehow came loose, you'd at least have a chance of finding them. So that is much better for your suspension components. Now we have all of these really super fancy plates, which it shows you where they go. We're gonna have to trim this because it's supposed to cover the end all the way up here. Well, that's where we moved our shock to. So we're gonna have to trim that, but otherwise they will sit here and look really pretty cool, actually. I think they're supposed to sit in like this and look pretty awesome. So we're gonna get those mounted up with the supplied hardware. I believe they just screw into the chassis itself, so we're gonna see how that works. Here we are. So we have the side panels on. Again, we had to modify these front side panels because it was supposed to cover this screw hole area. This upper area is on. We missed a screw hole here because that's where it wanted to screw into that metal bar that we used down here. But this still works beautifully. This is a 3D printed cover kind of roof that comes up and gives you access to where the receiver should go. So now we need to get the receiver electronics off the old one mounted in here. We still need to swap over the servo, and then we need to start looking at all these other pile of parts that we have. We took the supplied metal bumper and actually replaced it up here where we had that one crossbar. Now the shocks are mounted to it. That freed up that metal bar to be used back here in its intended location. Underneath this cover, we were able to swap over the stock ESC, so it's now in that spot. That works great. Motor's plugged in. We have a Dean's connector running from our plug, so we actually have that running in here. We run these small 8500 milliamp lithium batteries. Those are going to fit in there beautifully, and we'll be able to tuck all the wires and everything in. This is looking really, really good. Next up for us is the servo. So again, CCXRC Honey Badger servo, which will be long enough to actually get back there and plug in. Plus from NexxSpeed, this steering servo mount. So much stronger aluminum servo mount for this whole thing to go to. So we're going to take the screw off, old servo out, new servo in and plugged in, get the horn on there, get the servo mount on, and we're going to be in great shape. That's looking pretty good right there. Look at this, we're almost there. We got our fancy aluminum diff cover on. Since it's aluminum, we decided to put it in the rear because it's going to be lightweight. Once we get a brass one, we'll put that one up on the front. It's now time to swap the tires and wheels off, and as we pull these in, we actually have these brass top cad corners here. We have plastic hexes that are still on them. Now we can use these NexxSpeed brass items to go on as the hexes, and then we are swapping over tires. And I'll be honest, That's going to make a difference. That is a huge difference in tire height. I mean, this thing's going to be like a monster truck. It's going to be crazy. Check that out. Look how big that is. Look at this wheel all mounted up. That is staggeringly good looking. And check out the difference here that we're making. I mean, it is a lot taller, a lot wider. That is a much bigger wheel. It also comes with these 14.5 gram weights. These are supposed to go inside the wheel, but I don't believe they work with these aftermarket wheels that we have on this. They're supposed to work with the factory wheels, which are since long gone. Similarly, it provides these wheel covers, which are kind of cool. They match the rest of the chassis, and you're supposed to be able to put it on in this way. But it's kind of hard to see in the GoPro, but when you look at this with the wheels that we already have, it doesn't quite work. So we're going to try first without these. We're going to just use our standard wheels that we have, see how it looks. And, you know, maybe at some point in time, I will grab a set of stock wheels so that we can put all of this on and use it in that way also. And just like that, the grand unveiling, boom! There it is, folks. Check that out. Look at that crawler right there. We have the whole new chassis in. We got our top cad wheels, our Endura tires. Look at how massive those are. CCXRC Honey Badger servo up there ready to do some work. We need to get a battery in and give this thing its first test drive. We are noticing with all that weight down low how big the tires are. It'll just sit there. So side hilling should be pretty good for it, that kind of thing. Obviously, we're going to mount the battery up here. That's going to add a pretty good amount of high weight. We still need to watch for the turning here. It does look like at max turn, we are going to be able to hit that shock with our tire. But we still have these 6mm wider hexes that we can actually put on the truck. Don't know if I'd put them all around or if we would just put them in the front to bring that front out wider. But we're going to give it a drive first as it is, and then maybe come back and actually put on these wider hex hubs. First test run's done, and truck did really well, but we did notice that there was probably more rubbing, especially once the chassis flexes. There's more rubbing on here that we want, so we're going to try these and see if they fit, how they work with this front, and see if we can't widen this whole front out. As my son and I are trying to swap these hexes over, we ran into an issue. So the brass hexes with these wheels are so tight in these wheels that we literally cannot get them off. And if you can really see here, I have mutilated this one trying to get it out, so much so that I've actually damaged the wheel. Now, I'm very fortunate that I happen to have had another couple sets of these wheels laying around, so we can just take this wheel off, pitch this wheel away, make it go away, and then we'll be done. I don't believe it is necessarily an issue with the top cad wheels or with the NexxSpeed design of their hubs. I think or their hexes. I think it's just bad luck that the wheels tend to be a little bit tight, the hexes tend to be a little bit big, and when you get them together, they're basically together forever, which is actually normally a good thing until you want to trade them out. But these new hexes, these are those wider hexes that they have in there. This should really do just right for us for getting the ability to widen these wheels out a little bit, and so they don't hit the chassis or the shocks anymore. And now we are done. Check this out. Actually, would you go ahead and steer it one way? Yeah, look at this. Now we have plenty of clearance. We're not going to hit. Go ahead and steer it back that way, the other way. Look at that, plenty of clearance. We don't hit at all with those extensions on there, so those are a lifesaver. As of right now, we've only put those on the front. We did not put those on the rear. So you'll see we actually have a little bit wider stance in the front compared to the rear. That's actually going to be good also when it comes to cornering, going around corners and stuff, a little more clearance. Plus, we don't really want the weight on the back, so we're going to leave those off for now. But check that out. It is officially done. I do need to give, again, a shout out to the NexxSpeed folks thank you very much for sending us this stuff. You can now see what it looks like in order to convert your truck over. I mean, that is pretty cool right there. That is one good looking SCX24. I can't believe how much difference it really looks compared to when we started this whole event. I mean, that is crazy how much different that truck looks now. We still have a couple more things to do with this truck. Plus, I still have some more parts that NexxSpeed gave us. So stay tuned for some more stuff. And I think James and I think we're about to go get driving this thing. So we will see you in that next video. Thank you and goodbye.